Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up show time with Liverpool taking on Fulham this weekend at home at the mad kick-off time of 12 o'clock on a Sunday, which is incredibly weird, especially if you're going the match, which I am, and my train leaves at 8 in the morning, so I'm probably going to have to get up at about 6. So, I'm still looking forward to the game, of course, but I think 12 o'clock kickoffs are generally a little bit weird, and if I had my say in the matter, and if I got to choose, I'd do away with them altogether, because I just do not see the point of them. They're annoying, and of course Liverpool don't have the most amazing record ever when it comes to kicking off in the early hours of the day. But looking past that, this is obviously a game where Liverpool need to get back on track after what was a pretty poor result against Red Star Belgrade. I don't think by any means we should be in meltdown. I think the meltdown after the Arsenal game was embarrassing enough, let alone all the stuff that came out after Red Star, where, to be fair, we had a bad day and they had a really, really good day at the office. And yeah, we lost 2-0. Yeah, that's not what you want against a team that is in pot 4 and you should really be beating in order to get out of your group. But we're still at the top of the group. We've still got a great chance to qualify, so I don't see why people are absolutely losing their minds. But obviously, things aren't going brilliantly for Liverpool at the moment, and I think we do need a really, really positive result just to feel like our season's back on track, especially with the international break coming up as well. You don't want any sort of dark cloud looming over you for 2 weeks, and you spend the whole way through watching all those dreadful England games and all that, just thinking, oh God, I really want to see Liverpool get back on form again. And if we don't perform against Fulham, then that's going to really, really get on our nerves. Obviously, against Fulham, they're possibly the perfect team to play under these circumstances. I'll come on to them a little bit more later, but I think it's fair to say they're not having a great time of it at the moment in the Premier League. And, I'm not really that obsessed with goal difference. I think if you're comparing our goal difference to Manchester City's, you're missing the point. I think, if anything, just focus on the fact that we've got 27 points from 11 games, which is absolutely bananas. That is probably, I think it's the club's best start to a Premier League season. And if you were to extrapolate those points over a whole season, that's 93 points, which is pretty good. So I'm not doing my nut over goal difference or anything like that, but I think this is the kind of game where it would be nice to just not just scrape by 2-0 or 1-0 or 2-1 or anything like that, but come away after something like a 4-1 or a 4-0 or a 3-0 or something like that and feel like Liverpool actually blew the opposition away, asserted their dominance, showed they were so much better than the team that they came up against, and yeah, massage that goal difference just a little bit. And obviously, when you do look at the fixture list as well, this could end up being a very, very pivotal weekend at the top indeed. You have, of course, got the Manchester derby, where I think for the first time in a while, and the only time in a while, I can't see it happening again, we're Manchester United supporters. I'll be perfectly honest, as much as I hate them, as much as they are still technically a rival of ours, they're not in the relegation zone or anything like that. City are the direct rivals. They're the team we want to drop points, and they're not doing it very often, so we've got to take any loss or draw from them that we can get. And even if it comes from Man United this weekend, I will be absolutely up on the ceiling dancing away if Manchester United can get a win at the Etihad this weekend. And also, speaking of our rivals playing against, well, our rivals, Everton are playing Chelsea as well. Now, yeah, Everton, they're not that great, but I think we've all got to concede that they haven't actually been that bad so far this season. Obviously, against Chelsea, they don't ever have an amazing record against the big teams away from home. They're pretty poor in those sorts of games. So with it being at Stamford Bridge, I'm not really expecting that much. But you never know, they might come up with something. And, if this weekend ends with Liverpool winning and Chelsea and Manchester City dropping points, it will be absolutely fantastic, regardless of whether it is Everton and Manchester United who cause our rivals to drop their points. So, yeah, a really, really big game for Liverpool this weekend, not just because of who they're playing against, but because of who our rivals are playing against as well. So team news going into the game, Jordan Henderson, our captain fantastic, is back and fit for this game after being out for, I think, the last 4 matches, certainly since the international break. His last game was against Manchester City at Anfield in that 0-0 draw, which means that pretty much all of our midfielders are available for this match. I think it's something Jurgen Klopp actually picked up on in his press conference, and maybe that means that it's something that has been playing on his mind, that he hasn't had a full or pretty much full cohort of midfielders to choose from. Obviously, Oxlade-Chamberlain is still out, and he is essentially the one player that everyone seems to believe is the saving grace that would bring our season back into the light because of how iffy things have been so far in terms of the midfield linking up with the attack and stuff like that. But I think it is definitely something that's probably been irritating Klopp a bit, that he's never really had a full cohort of midfielders to choose from, not just for the purposes of rotation, but also because you've got a pretty nice variety of attacking and defensive midfielders in there. You've got like Shaqiri, who you can drop into a midfield three, and you've got Naby Keita, who are more attacking midfielders. You've got Milner, who can play that box-to-box role. Wijnaldum can play box-to-box as well, maybe Fabinho as well. You've got Wijnaldum, Fabinho and Henderson, all of whom can play that number 6. And, you know, if we play the midfield 2 as well, all of them can fit reasonably neatly into that formation. So I think Jurgen Klopp will definitely be happy to have all the midfielders at his disposal this weekend, because it just means he can pick the players that are the right players for the job in this scenario. And other team news apart from that, Joe Gomez is fit and available for this game, despite reports that he's nursing a little bit of an Achilles problem. Apparently, there's a doubt over whether or not he will make the England squad, but, you know, who cares about that? Apparently, he will still be available for Liverpool this weekend, so that is all that matters. So the starting 11 going into this game, how I think Jurgen Klopp is going to line us up. I think Alisson Becker in goal. Yep, no qualms there. Apparently, he could have done better about Red Star's second shot. I'll be honest, I don't think he's expecting a shot from that range, and I think, if anything, Joel Matip should be closing him down. So anyone who thinks that Alisson isn't delivering for Liverpool, he is. Don't worry about it. He's a fantastic goalie. So Alisson Becker is in goal for Liverpool. Right back, I'm going with Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think we want to be attacking in this game. We want to go for goals. We want to go for a comfortable victory. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, this is the kind of game where he can show himself to be back on form after what has been probably a difficult few months for him. You know, it hasn't been that great. The last game against Arsenal really was a struggle for him, even though, you know, I actually thought he was all right and I thought he dealt with things pretty well going forward in that game and in most of the games he's played so far this season. I think he has still got so much more to offer, and I think this is the right kind of game for him to show what he's capable of in a Liverpool shirt once again. Centre-back pairing, I'm going with Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk. I think there's a possibility that maybe you rotate out Virgil van Dijk because he's played an awful lot of games, and with him being the captain for the Netherlands, he's probably going to play at least one game over the international break as well. But I think, you know, you want a nice steady defence, especially if you're going to tell both of your fullbacks to bomb on and attack and create those chances and stuff like that. You do want a solid pair of centre-backs just to make sure that any counter-attacks from Fulham are dealt with incredibly well. And then left-back, I'm not entirely sure about this one. I've got Robertson down in my notes, but I've started to lean a little bit towards Moreno because I just think, obviously, Robertson's played a lot of games recently. It's the international break coming up as well, where he normally ends up playing 2 games for Scotland because, again, he's the captain of his international side. And I actually think Moreno wouldn't be that bad in this game. You know, I think Andre Schürrle does come down that side, so it's maybe a little bit of a worry. That's the side that Fulham favour, so it's possible that Moreno could get caught out a little bit. But I think Jurgen Klopp might be willing to just gamble on Moreno a little bit, because at the end of the day, I'm not expecting us to make huge wholesale changes for this game. I'm just expecting maybe 2 or 3 players to be rotated into the side. And I think as long as we keep a nice core defence of Alisson in goal and then Gomez and Virgil van Dijk at centre-back, we can afford to play Alberto Moreno at left-back. So I'm actually going to go with Moreno at left-back, even though I originally wrote Andrew Robertson in my notes. And then the midfield, I think we're going to go the midfield 2 because we went back to the 4-3-3 or something that vaguely resembled that in the games against Red Star and Arsenal. And I think it's fair to say it hasn't really worked as well as the 4-2-3-1 has worked so far this season. So I think we go back to having a base midfield of 2. And I think that midfield is going to be Henderson and Gini Wijnaldum. I think Henderson is nailed on for this game. We know that Klopp loves him. We know that I think Klopp, he kind of suggests in his press conference that while it would be silly to suggest that Henderson might have changed the game against Red Star and stopped us from losing it, because you just never know and it was a poor performance all round and stuff like that, he did seem to be suggesting in his press conference that we've missed Henderson over the last few games, and he seems incredibly glad to have him back. And I do think Henderson's last performance in Liverpool shirt against Manchester City at Anfield was actually a really, really good showing from him. So I think Henderson goes straight back into the side for this game. I think Jurgen Klopp will also want to see how he fares in that midfield too. And then I think he probably goes with Wijnaldum alongside him, partially just for stability. I was tempted to go with Naby Keita, who is also back and fit and maybe played a little bit against Red Star Belgrade, although I can't quite remember. If he did come on, it would have been the last 15 minutes or so, where, to be honest, I felt like falling asleep because the game was just A, really, really miserable, and B, really, really boring because Liverpool did not look like scoring at all. But, you know, I think Naby Keita is a shout for this game. I'd like to see him at some point, but I think Henderson and Keita from the start, when both of them have very recently recovered from injuries, and I don't think either of them have ever played in that midfield two alongside each other since they arrived at Liverpool, it would be a little bit risky, and I think Wijnaldum is a very, very safe pair of hands in comparison to that. So I think Henderson and Wijnaldum as the base midfield two. Ahead of them, I think Xherdan Shaqiri absolutely has to come back into the side. You know, he didn't start against Arsenal, played very well when he came on, obviously couldn't play against Red Star Belgrade, which was a bummer because I think he would have been incredibly useful in that game in terms of linking up midfield and attack, as he always does so well. So I think this is a game where Xherdan Shaqiri absolutely has to start, and in that 4-2-3-1 against this kind of opponent, he works so well as a right midfielder in that kind of situation. So I think Shaqiri has to start. I think you then put Firmino in the number 10, Sadio Mane at left mid, and Mohamed Salah up front. I don't really want to see us make too many changes. I think with the international break coming up and the fact that, you know, while we have played midweek, only a few days beforehand, we didn't play the midweek before that, so the players aren't necessarily knackered. So I think maybe just bringing in a couple of players who didn't start the game against Red Star, like Roberts, Moreno, like Shaqiri, and like Joe Gomez as well, I think that's enough rotation to get us through the game and still put out a lineup that is capable of blowing Fulham away. So taking a little look at Fulham then, obviously, like I said, they are probably the perfect team for Liverpool to play right now. Certainly out of all the teams in the Premier League, I think when we're not doing too well, when we're maybe struggling a little bit in front of goal and we need not an easy win, because you don't get those in the Premier League, but the kind of game where by the time it gets to about the hour mark, we're feeling like we've got it wrapped up. I think Fulham are absolutely perfect right now, for that right now, because, you know, their defence isn't that great. It's pretty poor. It's the worst in the league. It leaks goals like nobody's business and is so susceptible to the counter-attack as well. And while their attack is pretty good, it hasn't been firing as well in recent weeks as it was at the start of the season. And I'll be honest, from what I've seen of them play on Match of the Day and live and on Sky Sports and BT Sport and whatever, if I'm honest, they look a little bit like a championship team. I mean, you think about how bad Cardiff are, how bad they were when they played against us, and remember how bad we were against Cardiff and we beat them 4-1. Fulham played Cardiff recently and they lost. And both of them look like championship teams, but Fulham came off even worse, and they haven't really improved that much since then. Like I said, I think they're so vulnerable to the counter-attack as well, because their defensive positioning is just dreadful. I think I've seen like analysis of their defensive performances recently, and you look at where their defenders are. At times, their centre-backs have stepped out into the opposition half when they aren't even like pressing the goal that much. None of them are ever really in the right position, to be perfectly honest. And if you counter-attack on them and don't give them the time to get back into position when they lose the ball, then you could be absolutely deadly and you could end up scoring a hatful against them. So I think it's really important that players like Salah, players like Mane, Firmino and Shaqiri are all so quick in terms of when we get the ball, they make the right runs, they demand the ball quickly. It's also the onus is on our midfield as well, and even the defence, to deliver those attackers the ball as quickly as possible, because if we can do that and if we can counter on this Fulham defence, then we could end up scoring 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 goals against them. And then in terms of how they're going to attack, I think they maybe will end up using Mitrovic as a little bit of a battering ram, because even though that's not the Fulham way, they're not a Sam Allardyce team, they like to play free-flowing attacking football, but given that things haven't really been going their way so far and they are in the relegation zone, I think they will want to shake up their style of play a little bit. And with it being at Anfield as well, maybe if it was at Craven Cottage, they'd try and play through players like Jean-Michel Seri and Ryan Sessegnon and Andre Schürrle and try and play that beautiful attacking football. But with it being at Anfield as well, I think they're just going to try and get a goal by any means necessary. And Mitrovic is the kind of player who, if you ask him to just be strong, physical and get on the end of crosses, I don't think he would mind doing that too much. And that's why I have gone for that Gomez and Virgil van Dijk partnership in defence, because Moreno and Trent Alexander-Arnold are both susceptible to occasionally allowing a winger to get past them and whip a cross in. But if we've got sensible, stable centre-backs and a proper goalkeeper like Alisson to deal with those crosses, then I don't think Liverpool should be too worried. So all things considered, it should be a nailed-on 3 points for Liverpool this weekend. But with the results that we've had in the past, there is a little bit more tension going into this game, which is sometimes a good thing. You know, you don't want complacency, whether you're the players or the the fans. It's nice to go into a game with a little bit of tension in there, just to kind of bring up the I want to say tension again, but I've used that word so many times, the excitement factor of the game. So fingers crossed that Liverpool do still get that win. Fingers crossed for a Man United win and an Everton win again this weekend. Who thought we'd ever be saying that? I certainly don't think I'll ever be saying it again, because you never know, Liverpool could potentially end this weekend on top of the Premier League table. So, you know, crisis. What crisis? That is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, hit that like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days, weeks, months, whatever. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back on Sunday afternoon outside the ground with the post-match reaction video. Until then, bye for now.